Nicholas Musoke from Uganda Revenue Authority. Thank you, UN UWIDA, for the invitation. And this is a paper we did some 3 years ago after winning the first call for proposals grant from UN UWIDA. So it's about tax incentives in Uganda. And the question in the room is that do these incentives benefit the economy or they benefit the farms? That's what we try to highlight in this paper, and it's based on the fact that tax incentives in African countries we are really facing an issue of base erosion, profit shifting, and race to the bottom. We are competing amongst ourselves in providing these incentives. And that's what the current speaker was talking about in issue of IFFs. And in terms of Uganda, our CIT rate is around 30%, which is above the average in sub-Saharan Africa. But what we see is that despite us having quite a high CIT rate, we are not competitive in terms of how much we collect from CIT. Given the data which was analyzed around 2019, and the situation has not changed since, Uganda has the lowest CIT to GDP ratio within sub-Saharan Africa of around 0.9%. So there is the circumstances which inform this. What is normally given as a reason is basically the issue of tax incentives. We have very many generous tax incentives. And even the Ministry of Finance also agrees to that we have a lot of investment allowances and tax holidays, which have reduced the amount of CIT collections. Even the Prime Minister of the country last year also attested to the same. And she was like, we must be mindful of the need to safeguard our revenue base, because we are eroding the base as we are giving these incentives. So the study is trying to analyze how corporate taxing, the corporate CIT incentives, and we are using the panel data of the CIT returns from 2014, 2021, and also we are using a tax incentives database of the World Bank to try to analyze these incentives. So we identify the characteristics of the farms from the various incentives by using those different dimensions: industrial sector, the size. We also try to categorize the farms in terms of MNCs and domestic farms, looking at the employment and the profitability. So in doing that, we try to provide new evidence on how much revenue is foregone relative to the economic benefits that comes from this. A brief look at that, we see as in that figure is that incentives have been increasing over time from 2015 going forward. So we see that we are increasingly giving incentives to these farms. And what you see is that we are more and more giving tax holidays. Before we were giving incentives based on reduced tax rates, but as time goes by, we are now focusing on giving more and more tax holidays to the farms. And this is what the graph, this table is also showing. That what also we need to take and understand is that we came up with the Public Finance Act in 2015, which tried now to legalize some of the earlier discretionary incentives that were being given by the Ministry of Finance. So you will find that some of these incentives were already existing, but not within the law. So when we came up in 2015 with the Act, now most of them were, that's why you see now a huge jump of them, most especially those in tax holidays, exporting more than 80%. Those were given by the Minister of Finance. So in 2015, we came up with an enabling law, whereby now there was some bit of a basis on who qualifies for a given incentive and all that. So what is also is observed in this table is that generally, as a country, our structure of incentives is by and large the general structure worldwide. In terms of what incentives we are giving, because if you look at now, like the tax holidays, 19% of our incentives are of those, and when you see the developed world is around 20%. So we are basically within the same. Even when you look at the accelerated depreciation incentives, it's only on the reduced tax rates where we are above the average of the other areas. But in general, in terms of the numbers, our incentives are within the range. But it all begs the question that despite all this structural alignment and all that, we still have some bit of a problem. So again, when you look at the numbers, who are benefiting from these incentives, what we observe is that the numbers are stagnant, which reaffirms what I was talking about, that if you see the numbers, those benefiting from agro-processing, the number is not growing over time. The same you see by those benefiting from exporting more than 80%. The number is so which also confirms that many of these were already existing. So it's just the law which came up, which like legitimize them in a given sense. So despite the fact that these incentives are there, less and less of the farms are taking advantage of them, because first and foremost is that the conditions for you to benefit from them are quite stringent. So very few local farms can benefit from them, and they are by and large benefiting multinationals. So that's now the question which comes up, that why aren't farms benefiting? So they are quite ineffective in attracting new farms. So again, when you see in this table is that these are the number of observations which we looked at, but when you see in the table is that despite the fact that the share of multinational farms in the observation, which is 1.9%, we see that these, in terms of benefiting, now when it comes to the beneficiaries, it jumps to 19%, the multinational farms. And even it grows further to almost 2/3 when it goes to those benefiting from agro-processing and also those in special economic zones. So we see that the multinational farms are the ones mainly taking advantage of these incentives, and also what is most telling is that these farms were already profitable. So even if you give them these incentives, they don't really impact them a lot, because they already make the profits. Instead, you're even making them. So it goes back to what we're talking about, issues of profit shifting and because most of these multinational firms are already in tax havens. So the more you incentivize them, you're even making the whole issue of profit shifting and IFFs now more prevalent. Now, when you go to the revenue foregone, We did an estimate, but as a cautionary point is that this is a lower bound estimate, because what we observed is that many of the beneficiaries of these incentives don't file returns because they have tax holidays. So what we observed is that, and that's why you are seeing an increase of farms benefiting from tax holidays. But when they have tax holidays, the incentive of the Revenue Authority to go and audit their books is so limited. So they end up not really filing the returns. So even for the farms, now this analysis is based on those who filed returns, those who are benefiting from tax holidays. And also another caution is that the big farms in the oil sector, in the mining sector, their return is not online. So they file a paper-based return. And those are the big farms. So even the analysis does not include them because we were basically focused on those returns which are filed online. But we did an estimate of around 160 billion Uganda shillings, which is around $40 million, which we have lost so far due to these tax incentives. Then we also went to beneficiaries of those. This is another incentive whereby if you are investing far away from the city, you are given an allowance, and we are also seeing that more that the beneficiaries are mainly large farms and MNCs. Then we did a regression model to see the impact, and our focus for tax holidays, because the tax holiday is mainly for farms exporting over 80% of the production, farms in industrial parks, farms in zones, and also farms who are engaged in agro-processing. Then also there's also another incentive on depreciation for farms which are operate. So that is how we categorize our results. So what we saw from the results of the regression is that there's a link between tax holidays and investment allowances and increases. So farms who are getting tax holidays, we're having more and more employment. We're employing more people, and we're reinvesting more of their income. Also, MNCs have a high association between tax holidays and investment. So depreciation, in terms of accepted depreciation, so there was also an increase in investment in plant and machinery following the introduction. So in conclusion, we see that large revenues foregone due to tax holidays. So large in terms of assets and employees. So many people, there's an increment in employment expenses, profitability. So mainly local farms benefit from tax, but the proportion of MNCs benefiting is higher than the overall farm population. So more and more MNCs in terms of their population are having. So like I said, half of the farms claiming tax holidays would remain highly profitable even if taxed at the standard rate of 30%. So what are the takeaways is that policymakers should reconsider or refine tax incentives to increase Uganda's tax CIT revenue, and that's what we're trying to do as a country. So enhancing the analysis of administrative data is crucial for evaluating the impact of tax policies. And so we encourage all firms to adopt, like I said, some of the firms don't have tax filing, so we encourage them to improve monitoring and effectiveness of tax incentives. Thank you very much.